If Texas was a nation, it would be one of the biggest wind energy providers in the world. But leaders like Austin Energy have been working to integrate solar, batteries, and electric vehicles too. Ahead of the Texas versus California session we're hosting at the very first American Fully Charged Live next month, this native Californian went to see how Texas is giving us a run for our money on all of these topics. For a sneak peek of the 30 live sessions, who and what to come see at Fully Charged Live, stay tuned to the end of this episode.
What has enabled the last 30, 40 years of wind growth in Texas that hasn't happened elsewhere?
Well, it's a fascinating story, and there are books written about it, right, by colleagues of mine. And so it starts out with, years ago, wind-powered pumps to bring water up for feeding cattle, for example. So we've had this wind resource.
Right.
And when the technology progressed, so the Europeans, I think, really pushed that, then the opportunities started becoming more apparent. And there were a number of factors that came into play. West Texas, if you go out there, there's a lot of great wind. And so the technology got better. Federal policy on the production tax credit helped also improve the economics. Mm-hmm. Also, we have private ownership, okay? And Texas was a country before it was a state. And so basically the state or private ownership is the dominant. So there aren't that many locations in Texas that are owned by the federal government and off limits.
Very little public land. Like 90% of land here is privately owned.
And so the lands that the federal government does own were either gifted, say, Big Bend National Park or the military Fort Hood. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that private ownership helped too, because once people started realizing that the lessons they learned and the money they could gain from oil and gas, mm-hmm. those lessons could be applied to wind. Mm-hmm. And folks started realizing, well, if I'm a rancher and I'm having a tough time because of the drought and my crops are not doing well, but I can get, say, $10,000 per wind turbine per year royalty.
Right.
That can keep those folks in their ranches. That can be multi-generational wealth. And it's unlike, say, a coal plant where however they get the land, it's there and that's it. It's spreading the wealth. It's democratizing the wealth.
Right.
And the other aspect of gaining support in what you might consider very conservative areas is once you get a tax base, then all of a sudden you have new libraries, you have police cars, you have city halls, you have football stadiums in West Texas.
Yes.
Right? And it creates jobs. Yeah. And so young people don't necessarily have to go to the big Texas cities. They can actually be there.
Right.
So economic vitality. And so once it became apparent that the technology was viable and it was economic,
yeah,
and multiple levels of contributions to bringing the whole story together, it just fit, and then it just took off.
Right. We were at Pecan Street yesterday and talking to them a little bit about vehicle to grid because they're doing some research on that topic. And yet, from my sense, vehicle to grid is like the thing we've been hearing about, the promise of the last 15 or 20 years since Willett Kempton started talking about it in Delaware. But it has really seemed to me, especially from a utility perspective, that where it's been going is much more vehicle to home or building maybe, but not past the meter, and increasingly more recreationally to the extent any automaker is willing to consider that. From your standpoint, dealing with the regulators and the utilities and sort of that level of things, how optimistic should we be about net metering for cars the same way we do for solar?
So it's regionally specific,
right?
If you're in Hawaii and you have 35 cents a kilowatt hour electricity versus our 10 or 11 cents, right? And you have more and more renewables creating some variability on the grid, there could be a value proposition that works there that doesn't work here.
But Georgia with 4 cents a kilowatt hour power.
So just like anything else in the grid,
right.
Or regionally, we're different than Hawaii, we're different than California. Your energy use is different just because of our environment. We need more air conditioning here, right? and our prices are different, so the economics are different, our markets are different. So
Right.
take those places that it makes sense and apply it there. And we probably won't see V to G be economic because it may be just simply be more economic to put some more wind or solar on the grid
Right.
than trying to put it into a battery and pull it out. When you do the turnaround cost, losing say 15% from the turnaround inefficiency in and out of a battery, trying to coordinate with an aggregator into the vehicle, coordinating with the grid.
Right.
So energy is inexpensive, and inexpensive does not lead to all these sophisticated techniques necessarily, but these other regions, yes. Or in emerging markets, for
Sure.
example, it could be a microgrid.
Right.
So maybe it's not vehicle to home, it's vehicle to premise.
Yep.
So a village, okay, imagine a village using PV, inexpensive PV, inexpensive LED lights, and a plug-in hybrid
Right.
that can do vehicle to premise and be the hub for their village microgrid.
Right.
Absolutely can see that. So the two-way power flow, I see a lot of promise, but it's regionally specific, application specific.
Yeah, and it's not from a technological perspective, we've always kind of seen the promise. And yes, that sounds lovely on paper, but it does seem to be an economic challenge, both in making it make sense and whatever redevelopment of utility back offices and things that are required. And the
Sure.
appetite hasn't seemed there so far. But it also seems that you don't have to go past the meter to make it worth it to many from a retail perspective. And what I mean by that is those that would like it from a recreational standpoint. In California, ever since the fires and the power shutdowns there, or even earthquakes, storms on the East Coast, the notion of being able to use your car to power your house for a few days like they have in Japan is wildly attractive to certain swaths of the country, even if the cost is more than a gasoline generator.
You're paying for resiliency
You're-
versus
right.
trying to arbitrage the
And
energy
some
price.
psychology too, because arguably you could probably get a cheaper petrol generator, but
Right.
you want the clean power, you want the quiet, and there's other layers to it that drives you towards perhaps not just only the cheapest option as the only consideration.
So I've done modeling on that
Yeah.
for my PhD dissertation on electrical engineering, vehicle to home.
Because you have 4 degrees.
But, and it was fascinating. I took Pecan Street home data
Yeah.
because they had it instrumented. So for an entire year, minute by minute data, 20 homes there. And I modeled 4 vehicles, say a Prius Prime, a Volt, a Leaf battery, and a big Tesla battery.
So 2 plug-in hybrids, 2 EVs.
Exactly. Big battery, small battery, etc. And it was amazing how a vehicle home microgrid could back up a home. And instead of your PV shutting down when the grid, it would be able to keep up generating.
We have a very progressive community. They're very forward-looking. Innovation is part of our DNA, and we really care about our citizens. And so doing things that make sense for our community, solving real problems for real people, and using technology and innovation to do that are really important. We look at the electric vehicle space, going back to those plug-in partner days. The fact that the general manager of Austin Energy at that time went to Detroit and talk them into manufacturing some of the first plug-in hybrid vehicles to get this movement started says a lot about Austin and the credibility that we have in this space. I think the recognition that we receive nationally for the programs that we offer to assist our customers, to promote this innovation and technology, to be environmentally responsible, to truly be environmental stewards. And if it goes to the renewable front and what we're doing with renewable energy, to electric vehicles and electrifying the transportation space, it just says a lot about who we are, and it's really important for our community. I'm really proud of it.
Speaking of renewable energy, one of the things that strikes me as reasonably unique in the ecosystem is that historically the utility industry as a whole, and I am generalizing a little bit, but it's not entirely wrong, has had a bit of an ambivalent relationship with renewable energy and specifically residential solar and things that customers want to own themselves as opposed to utility grade. And yet it seems to me that Austin Energy has embraced all of these things and has sort of taken the approach of we want all the solutions and we're not going to sort of shove any of them away, and we're going to help incentivize and let people get them, but also do our own thing. Is that fair? What is as a utility leader, how do you approach those sorts of things, whether or not you get to own them in the end?
So I think one of the things that's interesting is you have different types of utilities. You have investor-owned utilities. You have utilities like Austin Energy that are owned by our city, by our community, a municipally owned electric utility. And you have cooperatives, and they all played a role in this history. Next year, Austin Energy is going to be celebrating 125 years of serving our city and our community with reliable, safe, affordable electricity. And so it depends on what your business model is. And we have a community that's very engaged, and they demand things from us. They want choice. And we see, being a public power utility, that that's our responsibility to bring those things to fruition, to make that happen. And one of the things that you have to manage is your cost recovery. How do you pay for those things? For every expense that we have to have a revenue source that's going to help us to pay for that. And sometimes those complex models of cost recovery become the challenge. They make it difficult for other utilities or other businesses to enter into a new type of business model. Our construct, the community that we have that's so engaged, that really supports us in doing those sorts of things, is what makes it happen for us.
So Electric Drive is basically our vision and a shared space to show what the future mobility could potentially look like. So right now you're being shaded by a solar powered kiosk. We have solar power running above us. We have storage in here. And that storage is running to a repurposed 50s era fuel pump that you can now plug bikes and scooters into. In addition to this lovely little space here to hang out and enjoy a coffee, the coffee shop next door, you could be fueling up your electric vehicle on that DC fast charging station over there, or a level 2 station if you have a little more time to spend. We have bike share, we have car share, all in kind of one celebration, open, touch and feel, and nothing here is fake or demo. It's all real world. It's deployed in a way for us to learn more about what customers like and what they don't like, so as we expand our programs we can learn from
And what are you learning?
Well, I've learned a lot. One thing I learned to get a larger coffee when I come talking coffee, so I don't have a little novelty shot of coffee when I'm talking to you about Electric Drive. But what we have learned is we've learned everything about customer behavior. When a DC fast, the average fill up is around 20 minutes. There's a lot of people that say, well, you need an hour, but people don't come on an empty and they don't leave on 100%. So what's the real world? And we can design programs around that. We also learned that it is good for a city, and I encourage every city to have their own Electric Drive, Electric Avenue, to have a physical showcase where when you're celebrating something transportation electrification related, whether you're launching a new electric vehicle fleet or a new car is coming to town and they want to do ride and drives or something, to have that space that fits within the context and have it within the community next to this beautiful park and people walking by and whatnot. So it's just a way to basically express our gratitude and for the community and by the community, and have a celebration space of all things EVs, and to kind of think a little bit outside of the box.
But while Austin is known as being more progressive, Texas is so clearly an oil and gas state. How are EVs being embraced? Is that charger being used?
Well, the charger's definitely being used. So according to our larger provider, it is actually the most used fast charger in the state of Texas and one of the most used in the nation. So we definitely get the usage out of it. And I would say, even though Texas has oil and gas, I'd put it a bigger, Texas is an energy state. And so even when you look at...
but that's a euphemism.
Well, I would say in some ways it's a reality. So even on y'all's Fully Charged show that recently posted, you talked about Texas wind power. And if it was its own country, it would be the 6th largest producing wind state in the world. So that is, clearly some leadership in renewable energy and in wind power. And so that charging station there, as well as the 850 charging stations we have out throughout Austin, are all powered through West Texas Wind, through our program called Green Choice. So it's about looking at what's sustainable, what's in the future, and what's scalable. And I think what's also important, what we're learning, is about One is we have public infrastructure. When do people normally want to charge and what kind of features they want in public infrastructure? But the vast majority of charging here in Austin, around 85%, is all done at home.
Right.
So what programs can we have at home? And we love home charging. Home charging makes a lot of sense for the utility, and still the most favored way for people to charge at home is just a wall socket.
Right.
What we call level one in the
Yeah.
industry, what everyone else calls an outlet. So it also helps us keep that balance and have programs for residential as well. So we have everything from time of use residential programs. We have rebates for people who want that faster charge level 2. But if people just want to trickle charge all night, and here in Texas, we could potentially have plenty of wind energy at night as well to have a business case or a customer that wants to soak up that wind energy, trickle charge overnight, and then be ready to go for the commute in the morning.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, our marketing main outreach campaign and spokesperson is Stevie, the EV loving T-Rex. Like, why not have a T-Rex be your face of the program? Because it's approachable and fun, and it was hatched with some social media kind of savviness.
And EVs don't run on dino juice.
They don't run on dino juice. Yes, fossil fuels are dead, literally, from a T-Rex perspective.
Yep.
There's a lot of kind of plays you can do with our team member Stevie. So it just, that's just kind of one is, I would say, the vibe, if you will.
Right.
But even beyond the vibe is just the level of innovation and experimentation doing the program. So in the EV space, Austin Energy has over 35 initiatives and programs that span a spectrum from everything from infrastructure, like you see here, to outreach like Stevie in this community space, to some other cool things that are kind of near and dear to my heart is EVs for schools. And this is a really great program to teach young kids, future leaders, future drivers, all about electric vehicles. It's science-based, there's virtual reality with it. Sometimes Stevie shows up to kick it off, depending on the grade level, because why?
It should go to all grade levels.
So that's a lovely program. Over 6,000 kids in the Austin area have been through this sustainable mobility program or training, if you will, and then other cities have started picking up on it as well, because we've made the instruction, if you will, public domain. And then also part of our DNA and thought is, when we launched it, we launched in schools with primary low-income kids, because we can't make it work for our low-income communities. A lot we do. Why do it at all? Let's start there. And to try to bust the myth that EVs are just not rich people or toys, toys for the rich, but these are real-world solutions. The technology should be available to everyone. We're starting to see a used EV car market.
Finally,
we're seeing other kind of things come up. We also like the reliability of EVs. Car repair is going to get expensive, so reliability is right as important, just important as cost as well, because you need that consistency.
Yep.
You don't want to be one transmission repair away from not showing up to your job, and then you get in that poverty loop. So as part of our current resource management plans, climate protection resource management plan, our current goal is 65% renewable by 2027. And that will put us at about 85% carbon free by that date. We're a little over 40% now.
Okay.
So we're...
You read my mind.
I think we're ahead of schedule now. And to put that in perspective, for a big utility with big generation assets, that is a big number to hit. I remember when we first started going on this journey, well, if we get more than 10%, there's going to be problems. And then it's more than 15% and 20%. So we're well on our way past 40. We're still pushing it. We had 1 month where over 50% of our load was generated by renewables, because there's sunny days like days with nice wind. So we have peaked over at 50% solely from renewables. And we're in the process right now of updating that plan to 2030, and we'll likely see even more aggressive goals.
So it sounds like you're throwing down for this panel you're going to be on at Fully Charged Live. Texas versus California, who's going to win?
Well, Texas is the home of don't mess with, Texas, so I feel like by default. But really very interested and engaged, because those are two different energy markets, two different policy environments, but I think both states are doing wonderful and really amazing things. And that might raise some people's eyebrows when they think of Texas. I think California has a position of just kind of policy and the leadership in that space, but when you really look at the numbers and what's happening, oh, you're going to love Texas and you're going to love Austin, Texas, what we're doing. So I'm happy to take that fight to California and what we're doing bigger and better in Texas, like everything else. Stevie is definitely attending. And I also hear there may or may not be a dance-off with Stevie. Stevie is an Austin dance-off champion, so not only a chance to meet, but I think a potential opportunity to have a dance-off with Stevie. So come on down, definitely. Stevie will be in the mix, and you might have a Stevie sighting. Follow Stevie on #LoveStevie.
Oh my gosh. We had a great week here in Austin. We caught up with a bunch of neat people about their work. I loved rocking out with Stevie. He even gave me the shirt off his back. I can't wait to come back for Fully Charged Live, not least because now there will be an EV one joining us, an actual one. So special shout out to the Oklahoma Electric Vehicle Association and Tulsa Tech for letting us have their little green car for the weekend. On a personal note, thanks for your support of me joining the show, for all of the support of all of our work, for liking and subscribing the page below if you haven't already, and for checking out our Patreon. Thanks again for watching.
So if you're in Texas and you're interested in clean energy and electric vehicles, and really, how could you not be? Get yourself to Circuit of the Americas on February 1st and 2nd. In addition to dozens of exhibitors and lots of electrified vehicles of all shapes and sizes, including the Porsche Taycan and Rivian's incredibly cool electric trucks, there are also 30 entertaining live sessions on key topics such as the aforementioned Texas versus California, how far ahead is Tesla and can it be caught, and Rivian blazing a trail for pickup trucks. So join Robert Llewellyn, Leilani Munter, and little old me, as well as our amazing YouTube partners like Hyperchange, Jehu Garcia, Now You Know, Rich Rebuilds, Teslanomics, Transport Evolved, and many others for an electrifying weekend out. As always, thank you for watching.